I'm here to tell you a story about an amazing woman named Cordia Pugh who brought 27 families together to clear, cultivate, and care for a piece of land in the heart of Chicago, and about the difference she and her fellow gardeners have already made in each other's lives and also in the community where they live. As the story unfolds, you'll see that open land that's cared for and accessible in the city looks a lot different than open land in the country, and it shows that vital land can also come in small packages. Cordia lives in Chicago's Englewood neighborhood, which is one of the most disinvested in the city, but where also many hardworking people still live, still remember when this neighborhood was vital economically and culturally, and who still have hope that it can be turned around. Last winter, Cordia and a group of her neighbors began getting together on Saturday mornings and talking about how nice it would be to get together and build a community garden. A lot of them had gardened as kids with their parents or grandparents, and they remembered the recipes that came out of that and the good feelings. And some of them had already been going to meetings of a new organization in Englewood called the Greater Englewood Garden Association. And they liked the idea of a network of gardens replacing the derelict vacant lots that had become eyesores and hangouts for gangs and drugs in that neighborhood. They drove around and wrote down the addresses of vacant lots close to where they lived. There were too many of those in that neighborhood, of course, but some of them were too shady, and one of them was over the line in the ward of an alderman that thought community gardens just brought rats. But by spring, they'd found a triple lot about 75 feet by 125 feet on South Hermitage Street, just one block east of Cordia's home, and they'd secured permission to farm it from the landowner. The 3-lot space was a jungle, though. The second slide you saw here wasn't really the before picture. It was the picture of the land after they'd removed huge piles of brush and weeds and rocks and debris. An elderly Vietnam vet and retired tree trimmer named Ernie Reynolds took charge of the clearing. Cordia said he worked them hard, but he worked harder himself than people 40 years younger than him. Ernie's 80. One of the pictures in the slides that you already saw shows a very tired group posing for a picture after a long day of clearing the land. As soon as it was cleared, they took up a collection, and they also called on Openlands, which had helped organize that community-wide gardening organization, to help buy lumber and soil. Several of the men had carpentry skills, so they built raised beds and filled it with soil. A local high school, there's a partner, had a greenhouse, and they made it available for seed starting for all the community gardeners in the neighborhood. So this group was able to start tomatoes and peppers and okra indoors. And by mid-May, they were able to transplant the plants and start seeds for lettuce and cucumbers and squash, other direct seed crops. And by late July, they were ready to have some harvest. The participants who were new to gardening were amazed that these huge plants grew from those tiny seeds. One gardener called out to a visitor with a camera, "Come and see my first bell pepper." There's a picture of that in here somewhere too. The tomatoes are also getting ripe, and the okra was taller than some of the gardeners. The Hermitage Street gardeners were also beginning to make a difference in their neighborhood. They brought food for barbecues every weekend and invited more neighbors to attend. They knocked on the door of an elderly widow next door and discovered she had no one to help her with repairs on her house, and she was even afraid at first to answer their knock. They got together and fixed her garage roof, and then they connected her with a city program to weatherize her windows. They also brought her food, of course. They talked another neighbor into starting a garden to keep him busy while he was trying to break a drug habit. After he showed he was serious by working in the garden every morning for weeks, they also bought bus passes for him and helped him connect with places to apply for jobs. Yet another neighbor, who was pictured in this slideshow earlier, that's one of the barbecues, and had almost never eaten fresh vegetables, had diabetes, and she didn't have any idea how to put together a healthy diet. So Cordia and the other gardeners, especially one who worked as a chef, pitched in to help. The chef also used herbs from her garden to include in her catering business. Then the local CBS News outlet heard about the garden and came to do a feature. The whole summer had been filled with stories of shootings in Englewood, including the fatal shooting of a policeman. and the TV news staff was glad to find something positive to report. It turned out that the on-camera reporter had grown up a few blocks away and remembered when the corner just south of the garden was one of the most dangerous corners in the neighborhood. If this block can be turned around, anything can, he said. He and the cameraman spent a lot of time with a very knowledgeable 12-year-old in the group who not only knew what all the plants were, but was able to talk about why gardening without pesticides was so much healthier. Next year, the Hermitage Street gardeners hope to help some other groups in Englewood start new gardens. And Cordia, who works as an executive assistant to the John D. at the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, has persuaded her fellow employees to designate matching gifts to a special fund set up by Openlands at Cordia's request to be used to support community gardeners citywide. Openlands has decided to name the fund in Cordia's honor and has already begun to get contributions to it from individuals with no connection to the MacArthur employees, but who see the value of community gardens as a way to provide access to green space close to people's homes. Meanwhile, the gardeners at Hermitage Street are already planning to host regular musical gatherings in their gardens starting next spring. Our garden does so much more than put food on the table, Cordia said. It provides space to meditate and also to bring people together. I don't think enough people have a connection to the land and take land stewardship seriously. They just don't realize how far-reaching the benefits can be.